Hello and welcome to the Hands Up If You're Human podcast, an ongoing series of conversations dedicated to exploring and celebrating the messy reality of being human. The truth is, there is nothing any of us can think, say, do, or experience that isn't 100% human. So it's time to drop the shame and the guilt, accept everything that we are, and start working to create the lives we really want to live. Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Wyndham. I am the Blueprint Coach. And today is an auspicious day because our 21st episode is the first episode with a guest. And today I am slightly nervous, but delighted to introduce our first guest, very special person in my life, Louisa, my wife. Hello, Louisa.
Hello,
everyone. How weird is this going to be?
This is so weird.
I know. But it's weird, isn't it? Because we've been together a very long time and we talk about this kind of stuff relatively frequently.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, with a camera and a ring light and
Yes.
a formal setting, it suddenly feels a bit strange.
Yes, it feels a little bit like we're in a therapist's office without the therapist.
Oh my God, self-therapy.
Yeah.
But I guess in part that is a little bit of what these conversations have been for us.
Yeah, definitely.
It's not necessarily what we intended to talk about today, but I think it is a really important aspect. And certainly this podcast for me has been about really looking to bring my awareness to and accept everything that makes us human. And there's nothing more human than two people trying to figure stuff out together.
Am I supposed to say something now?
Yeah.
I agree. It's, and obviously we're going to get into it more as we go along, but it's been, and I'm going to use your favorite word, interesting, going through this in the last however many years. I mean, it's probably 8 or 10 since you started, but certainly in the last maybe even 2 since we left London, the kind of ramp up of this, and actually how much we talk about it.
Yeah.
Almost a little bit too much. No.
Take a day off.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one. And actually that kind of brings us to the topic and the reason we're having this conversation is this idea of doing the work. You said to me a number of weeks ago when I was saying I wanted to do an episode, initially I planned to do an episode just on my own saying, this is me doing the work. This is what it looks like. And then you asked the question, what the fuck does that mean? Doing the work.
Yeah, I did. And firstly, even the phrase, I remember saying to you at the time, even the phrase doing the work, it for me now feels a little bit like nails going down a chalkboard. Like just the phrase, it's like it's almost become this hashtag.
Yeah.
Like hashtag blessed, hashtag doing the work. And I'm
hashtag
like,
best life.
What the fuck is that? Like, what is doing the work? And I think for anybody who, which I think is a majority of people who aren't, and I'm doing inverted commas, doing the work, like what does it even mean, and how, and does that mean that they're lesser of a person? You know, we've had this conversation about just if you're not doing the work, does it mean you're bad, or does it mean like you're, oh, you know, because there's so many, this whole wellness thing and self-improvement, and I'm not against it at all, and we'll go into it, you know, later about stuff that I do, which could be doing the work, but I don't know, because I don't even know what doing the work is. Do you just sit around and think all day?
And do you think part of that question is informed by your perspective of me doing the work in inverted commas?
Maybe.
I do sit around and think.
Well, yeah, maybe, because you spend a lot of time sitting in your office, study, whatever you want to call it, your little cave with the door closed. And I'm like, I don't know what he's doing in there. I mean, and
Nothing untoward.
no, I know that, but
Planning to overthrow the world.
well, yeah, I mean, you said that as well, but like, what do you just sit there and do you think? Like, are you writing in a journal? Are you meditating? Are you doing breath work? And these are all things that I have done in the past. But like, is that doing the work? Or is it just, yeah, so like, just what is that? And does it differ? And is there no set list of things that you have to tick off to then go,
I'm now officially
doing the work,
yeah.
because I bought the books and I bought the gratitude journal and I'm doing yoga every day and I'm talking to a therapist and I'm taking ayahuasca, you know, what?
Yeah, it is interesting. And I think there's so much we see now on Instagram or any social media channel, which is a picture of somebody doing the work. And because it's just a picture, a snapshot, there is no conversation about, well, but what are you actually doing? Because the picture shows you writing in a journal. The picture shows you seemingly blissfully meditating. The picture shows you contemplating over the Indian Ocean or something like that. But to your point, what the fuck is actually going on inside? Because I have a very strong view, and I know we've spoken about it, that it's really important for us as individual people and collectively to separate the mechanisms we use to achieve something from, one, the deeper work that is happening, in inverted commas, but also the meaning that work is in service to.
Okay, so going back to my question,
Yeah.
what is the work? What is this deeper?
Yeah.
Like, what is it like? What is it you do when you're sitting in your room or you're going off on your walk? Like, what are you doing?
So good. I think I want to separate those two things because there's the doing that follows the intention. So for me, my intention now, and has been for 8-9 years, is can I, or how deeply can I reconnect to who I really am? Because for such a long time, and I believe this is true for almost everybody, I was trying to be somebody I wasn't in order to fit in with what I felt the expectations of me were. Now, that primarily ended up being don't knock the microphone over, Terry. Hello, Terry. Primarily that ended up with my focus on work, but it also impacted how certain I felt about things, that I felt I had to be right in order to have kind of value. So when I talk about doing the work, it is in service to me more deeply connecting with who I really am. And that sits beneath the armor that I have built up over the years. It sits beneath the expectations that I have adopted for myself based on expectations of others and what I believe other people expect from me. So sitting alone in my room, contemplating, thinking, and I'm at that point where I'm in my head too much, definitely. The intention of doing the work is to reconnect to who I really am. How I go about doing that, to your point, I think it doesn't really matter. It's what works for me as an individual. So I could journal, and journaling with the intention of understanding myself better I would classify as doing the work. I could meditate with the intention through that meditation of reconnecting to who I really am. That I would classify as doing the work. I could go for a walk in the woods with an intention to reconnect to who I really am. And anything I do that is the core intention of, I think, is doing the work.
So, so all of those three things require thinking about stuff or thinking about yourself. No, no, no.
Yeah.
So is it basically a case of, okay, doing the work then just means thinking? Honestly, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, is it just okay? So you're thinking so like to become more aware of what you're doing or what you're saying or how you're being or how you're feeling.
Yeah.
But all of that is just you're thinking about it.
Yeah.
I'm
No, it's
asking,
good.
I know it
Yeah,
sounds like a
it's
stupid
good.
question.
No, it's not. It's not at all. And I think you used the word bringing your awareness to, and I think the process of doing the work is awareness, acceptance, surrender, ownership, intentional action. I think there are kind of 5 areas, and I think they flow in that order. I say a lot to my clients, we cannot address what we aren't aware of. So I believe awareness has to come first. And that is, for me, that requires my mind. That requires me to think about, well, actually, what is going on, either with me or my reaction to what is happening around me or to me or within me. So, yes, I think it requires thinking about, because where do we process our awareness? But I'm still kind of winging this stuff 9 years in. So I think it starts with thinking, and there is a very real risk of being stuck in the thinking bit. And that has historically been I guess my safe space is I can think. I'm confident in my thinking. Oh,
I can think. I think, therefore I am.
yeah. But it can very quickly become a little circle that you just run around in. And that has been a problem for me, because actually bringing our awareness to the problem so we can understand what it is doesn't do anything with it. It's just like, oh, now I can see it. Okay. But that isn't doing the entirety of the work, because if I bring my awareness to something that I then recognize, well, this isn't serving me, this isn't serving my intention to reconnect to who I am and project who I am into the world, then it's, well, what do I do with it now? Because what I found, certainly with the awareness piece, was once you become aware of lots of different things, I then got stuck in for a period of time, a blame. I'm going to call it a trap, because I think when we blame ourselves, it's very difficult. I found it very difficult to do anything about it when I was blaming and then judging myself.
Okay. Is it enough? Like, do you have to have gone, well, like those, was it 5 stages?
Awareness, acceptance, surrender, ownership, intentional action.
Do you have to go through all those 5 things like consecutively at that point? Is it not enough? Can it not be enough for just to be aware? And do you have to then go, I'm aware, so now I have to, what's the next one?
Awareness, acceptance,
accept it, and then surrender to it, and then
own
it, and then act on it.
Yeah.
Can you not just, is it,
Yeah.
do you have to do those things?
You don't have to do anything.
Okay.
I think that's for me, it's a really interesting one, because I've worked those, I haven't created them, but I've come to those 5 stages because my intention is to change who I was. And that's a bit, my intention was to let go of the things I was believing, thinking, and doing that were creating unhappiness in me. So, but it might not have been. It might have been, actually, you know what? I'm all right. I don't really like my job. However, rest of my life is pretty bloody good, and it was and still is. So if I can see my job as a mechanism and it earns me money, and that means that you and I can go on nice holidays and go for nice dinners and have a lovely home and all those kind of things, then being aware that the problem is the job and it isn't that big a problem is enough, would have been enough. What I found was, having come to the awareness, I was so broken by it, or deeply wounded by it, that I couldn't see a way forward with the status quo. So I got to a point with the job that they were going to fire me. There's no two ways about it. I was so disconnected from it and disengaged and just didn't care. But there's no doubt they would have eventually had to fire me. And at that point, it would have been, oh shit, am I going to have to go and prove myself again in a job and an environment I really hate? So for me, that awareness then really kind of was the catalyst for, so what are you going to do about this? Because you cannot go on as you are. I mean, that's not like a waggy finger. You cannot. That's like you're at the end of this road, definitely. So what happens now? And we've spoken a little bit about some of the dark thoughts I had at different times, and they never were around for very long, and they were never anything I was going to act on. But I think it's really easy to have those. It's like, well, I'm at the end of this road. What the fuck do I do now? Because I cannot go further on. There is no further on this road. So for me, that was the point where awareness had to turn into, I had to do something with my awareness. And that's where all the blame came, where I was sat for so long, was because I didn't know how to change it, to fix it. I didn't know how to go forward. So then the acceptance piece is like, well, this is where we are. There's no point wishing it were different, because it isn't yet. This is as a result of the choices I have made. Now, some of that undoubtedly is informed by my blueprint, and most of it is automatic. But until I accept that I am the orchestrator, I am the creator, then I'm at the whim of everybody else and there's nothing I can do. So for me, it wasn't that I had to go through those 5 phases. It was, having gone through each phase, it was like, well, now what? Because I still feel shit. Or now what? I realize I'm in control. Now what? Well, I'm in control of myself. Now what? Well, eventually you get to I need to take intentional action to create something different. But to your question, I don't think you have to go through all those 5. It is an entirely personal adventure.
Because I was just thinking of some, like the similar thing, like, is it the 5 stages of grief? So again, and some of that is like anger and denial or whatever. And they've now said that actually it's not a linear line across those 5 emotions or stages.
Yeah.
You can go from 1 to 5 to 4 to 5 to 2 to 1 and back and forth. And it's not a case of you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and you're done. Is it the same with, do you think it's the same with this? That kind of, you can go from, you can maybe jump straight to an action, or maybe there must come some thinking and awareness first, but you then jump straight to an action and you suddenly realize, oh shit, that was the wrong thing to do. So then you go back to then more contemplation, that more then awareness, and then kind of an acceptance of that. But can you
jump around,
jump up and down?
Yeah. Yes. In short. So I know I said, I think it's linear. And this, I think, is a great example of how fluid this stuff is. Because, of course, it's not linear. But earlier, I was thinking, yeah, it's linear. You go from awareness to acceptance to surrender to ownership to action. But it's not. And actually, if we are looking to create change at whatever level, in whatever area of our life, the only way we do that is through action. And we can't know whether that particular action is going to deliver what we want. So I think I get stuck in really trying to focus on fully defining what it is I'm trying to create, because only once I've done that do the actions that are most likely to serve that outcome present themselves? However, it makes me slow to take action. Whereas we learn through failing. You can't think your way to the perfect path. Well, you can, but as soon as you take a step on it, then it's going to fall apart, and the universe will throw stuff at you that disrupts it. So actually, action is the creator of change. My only sense of it is, unless I'm connected with what I really want to create, then I'm going to be a busy fool. I'm going to be acting, and I'm never going to be sure whether it's going to move me closer. Whereas if I take some time to build my awareness and acceptance, and those with a view of those 5 steps, then I can identify actions theoretically more easily. And whatever the outcome, I have a level of confidence that there was the right intention, irrespective of the outcome. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think so. I'll have to think on it.
Yeah. But it is a problem for me, stuck in my head thinking.
Yeah, because so I listen to a lot of podcasts, as you know, as I call them, my stories. And I listen to a lot of, Brené Brown, and I listen to a lot of Glennon Doyle and stuff of that kind of ilk. I mean, I love them both. I think they're incredible. And again, kind of you read stuff and it talks about the difference between thinking and feeling and getting out of your head. I remember once going to an osteopath for my back, and he does a bit of Reiki,
Yeah.
as well. And he was working on my back, and then he kind of did a bit of the kind of hands-off Reiki. And the first thing he said to me, he said, "You need to get out of your head.
Yeah.
We need to get you out of your head." And I remember thinking, like, oh, what's he talking about? And I think, to your point, and I think it's true for everyone, I think we spend an awful lot of time in our heads thinking about everything. We think all the time, even when we're asleep. It's that subconscious, and then the difference between that and feeling. But isn't it kind of the same thing anyway? Because even if you're feeling something, you have to think about what you're feeling. So you're like, I think I'm feeling angry. I think I'm feeling frustrated.
So, really interesting. Are you thinking, do you have to think to feel? Is that the kind of question?
Well, what's the difference?
So,
I know there is a difference, because one of them apparently you do in your head, and the other
Yeah.
one you do in your body, apparently. But what's the difference? Because you then have to engage with the thinking process to process what the emotion, what the feels are. So aren't you just doing it in your head anyway?
really good question. And I don't know. I think is the first point. And certainly with any of this, the work, anyone who tells you this is the way, is that they might be telling you what their way was, but that whole kind of almost waggy finger dictatorial, do this, make sure you journal every single day. Well, that might work for them, it might not work for you. But with that thinking, feeling thing, I had a client once who I asked, we'd been talking about lots of different things, but I said, okay, well, how are you feeling now? And they barely understood the question. They were so disconnected from their emotions that it was almost like the entire world happened above their neck, only in their head. And they were so disconnected from their emotions that they wouldn't have been able to articulate what they were feeling, or they couldn't articulate what they were feeling. So I think there is a connection, but I wonder whether the connection is, I have this feeling, we're driven to understand, And the way we have been taught to understand is through engaging our mind. So we can then label and box. If we didn't have the language, which most of us don't, we tend to go, I feel happy or I feel unhappy. What are there are three. I feel mad, glad, or sad. Mad, glad, or sad, yeah. Because we lack the nuanced understanding of exactly what is happening within our bodies, because our emotions don't happen in our head. If you think about where you feel an emotion, like you ask me that question and I can feel like almost a nervousness come into my stomach and moving up into towards my heart. And I can feel it, I can locate it, and then my mind comes in because I have awareness and says, oh, do you know what's happened there? Louisa has asked you a question you don't know the answer to. You're on your own podcast and you want to sound like you know what you're talking about. What the fuck are you going to do? Right? So they're not the same, and I wouldn't have to think to feel it. However, I agree. I think there is a connection, because if I don't try to understand it, which requires me to think, what do I do about it? It just sits there because I haven't identified it and gone, oh, this is that external expectation thing. You want everybody to think you're good, therefore you should be able to answer this question. If I don't do that, then this feeling is in control. Even because then I'm just thinking, oh my God, why do I feel this way? Whereas now it's like, oh, well, of course I don't know the answer. Anyone who claims they do is making it up. And that's I'm going to own that. I have some awareness. I've accepted it. I've surrendered to it because I don't understand. I'm going to own it. And my intentional action is I'm going to be honest. I'm going to say, this is how I'm feeling. This was the immediate reaction, which is a long-winded way of saying they are connected, but I don't think they have to be. We don't have to think to feel. We do have to think to contextualize and understand.
So that's just so okay, I understand that and I get it and I agree. And that is an example of you just doing those 5 things almost in a linear fashion in a very, very short space of time.
Yeah.
Which I hadn't thought about the question of when I asked, do you have to do it all in a linear order? But again, you don't have to do it all immediately either, do you?
No,
so some of it, like you've just done, it happens almost instantaneously because it happens within being asked a question and answering the question. You've done those 5 things, but then those 5 things could potentially then take years for something else.
Well, they did.
Okay, yeah.
So I think for me, the reason in that instance I could do those 5 things in the 30 seconds is because I've been trying to do those things for 9 years.
It's just practice.
Absolutely, it's just practice. And it is really believing that I 100% believe that those are the steps. And I 100% believe they're all ultimately necessary for me to create what I want. And awareness on its own it's like if you're the Titanic, awareness was, well, there's an iceberg ahead. Brilliant. And what are you going to do about it? We're going to hit it because we're not going to whatever, all those other bits. But I'm committed to working on awareness, accepting it, what is for what is, not judging myself for it. Whereas 10 years ago, the idea of not knowing I would have been very, very forthright in an opinion based on my own arrogance. Whereas now I recognize, actually, I don't know anything. Not really. If I work hard at awareness, I can know my own experience and I can share all of the stuff we're talking about today with regards to, well, this is what I do. It might not work for you. I've lost my thread. Can't remember where I was going with that. But practice, I guess, is the point.
Yeah.
And oh yeah, practice, and I 100% believe in those steps. So surrendering is a massive one as well, which is part of acceptance. It kind of comes after acceptance. It's like, but it's okay to surrender to it. This feeling is because right now it's not so much now, but I really want people to think I'm good at what I do. And my upbringing has taught me that the way you do that is by demonstrating expertise, knowledge, and being certain. Whereas my expanding experience over the last 9 years is the opposite of that. And actually being able to go, I have no idea. Don't know. This is what I'm thinking at the moment. And this is and so the mind-body connection is really important. I think a lot. I think it's been overplayed. The mind has been overplayed. The power of our intelligence versus the power of our bodily wisdom is out of whack. And so I don't think we benefit from cutting off our thinking, but it is, how do I elevate the wisdom in my body so that we're at least on equal talking points in my thinking and my feeling? Because we've all had those instinctive reactions. It's like, and we've ignored them, and maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. Yeah.
And how would you recommend someone start to readdress that balance? I think we've had a conversation in the past where I've said that for a very long period of time, due to many different things that I'm not going to bore people with now, I haven't felt connected to my body for maybe heading towards 20 years. Felt very disembodied. How would one go back to starting to readdress that balance? And is that about doing things like hashtag
the work
like, you know, so I guess it's different for everyone. Is it to spend more time thinking and not being in your body, or is it to do stuff like coaching or meditation or therapy?
My wife offering a promo because I'm a coach. If you want to work with me, just drop me an email.
Or anything that, you know, what typically gets people out of their heads?
Yeah. Well, another really good question, because it's helped me suddenly clarify that awareness is not necessarily about thinking. For me, thinking is the interpretation. It is the attempt to understand, the contextualizing, the finding something and then moving it around until it makes a bit more sense. Awareness doesn't have to be that part of it. The acceptance, surrender, ownership part is more about a thinking piece. However, and I'm winging this now because I've not thought about this in this way before. But if we are, as you describe, disembodied and have a strong focus on being in our head, unconsciously, we're just always in our head. Being aware, we have our body. We have a body. It's like, okay, well, I can see it, I can touch it, I'm not really feeling it. Can we bring our awareness into our body? This is one of the big things in yoga, is the mind-body connection. So that whole, with the asana and the flow, it was, when I was first doing it, when I first started practicing yoga, it was very much like, you know, lizard pose or low lunge or whatever it might be, and you're transitioning from one to another. For me, it originally was pace of transition. Can I get into the shape properly? Whereas after a little while, it became, okay, can I really connect into my body so I can do the slowest possible transition and be in control of my body. But I can only do that by bringing my awareness to it. Which bringing your awareness to your physical body is different from the emotional body. Oh my God. This is all the stuff when I did my yoga teacher training that I rolled my eyes at. The different types of body we have, the physical, the energetic, the spiritual, all those different things. But the more I do this stuff and the more I talk about it, the more I realize there are these multifaceted layers that we may benefit from exploring. But that kind of getting into it, how do you get out your head into your body? I would recommend working on sitting 5 minutes. You don't have to meditate for an hour, but sitting. So when, again, in yoga practice, you end up having things like feel the connection your feet have to the ground, like specifically the underside of your foot. Can you feel that? Can you like flex a toe and feel the change in your balance? And if you're sat down, can you feel where your sitting bones connect to the floor? And then when we experience emotion, it's happening in our body, like that nervous feeling it again, because I'm winging this. Just bringing your awareness to this is happening. This is what is happening. There's no point me wishing it wasn't, because I'm not going to be able to wish it away. What does it feel like? So there is, and even in that, what does it feel like requires a thinking component. But even just being aware that this stuff is happening, I think is the first step. I think is a helpful step.
Okay. I'm thinking about, I feel like I'm interviewing you.
Yeah.
Which is really, really weird. And I don't know where the next bit of this conversation goes. However, I know that we were talking a while ago when we were planning this about, you had said you wanted to do this because you wanted to explore what it was like potentially for me living with somebody who was doing the work.
Yeah.
And I had turned around to you and said, I know, but what the fuck is the work? Which is where this whole conversation has come from.
Yeah.
But I don't know whether it's worth, I feel like Michael Parkinson interviewing you. Like what it's been like for you doing the work.
Yeah. Well, I am genuinely very interested in what it's like for you as well, because I think I didn't feel I had a choice when like 9 years ago, that at my absolute lowest, like I said, I'd come to the end of the road and it was like, I have to do something. I have to, because there's no other option now. And when I started, so yoga was my access into the work. But even that, I went to my first yoga class. I can't remember whether you came with me actually.
No, you weren't.
I was there because I thought I wanted to do a handstand. I thought that would be cool. I wanted to be physically strong and have that slender, wiry strength of a yogi that I associated with the yogi. But what I found when I got there was Chris. Shout out to Chris Abbe. He had this really lovely blend of the physiological, the musculature that you're engaging, and he laced the yogic spirituality, that what yoga really is about, through it. That kind of, I suddenly had this moment of like, oh, latched on to a couple of things he said. But actually the process, certainly in those early days, in those early years, was pretty terrifying. And I didn't share this with you because I was terrified. Because what I found was, one of the things Chris said in one of those very early yoga classes was, just as you're going into Shavasana, typically, which is corpse pose at the end. It's you lie there, and the intention is that your body gets to absorb the practice that you've done. And he'd, in the lead up into the silence of Shavasana, he'd said, "You are enough," to the whole room. And some people in that room wouldn't have heard it. Some people it wouldn't have landed with. For me, it was like a bell, because I didn't believe it. And so that was like, hang on a minute, you don't know me. That doesn't sound like how I feel. But it was, I don't know what it was. It was either his seeming, well, there's no arguing with this, you are enough, that started resonating to the point that was the first thread for me. It was like, well, if that is true, what about all these other things I think I believe? How much of that is as a result of my genuine lived experience, and how many of those beliefs and truths are conditioned into me, have been forced upon me, have been established through repetition throughout my life. And the reason I was so terrified is I then felt I had no choice but to go in search of every single one. I didn't realize how big a task that was, so I'm not going in search of everyone now. But going in search of everyone at the time and testing it. Do I still believe this? Is this really my belief, or is this something I've been given? And one of the reasons I didn't include you in it was because one of those beliefs was about marriage. And I do remember telling you after the fact, and you went, well, how was that when I kind of came out of my cave? Because it was a week-long cave.
Yeah, which you are prone to going into your cave.
I can sit in my own suffering quite well.
And I know then just to leave you there, and you will eventually come out. But I do remember there being a period that you were very kind of withdrawn, and I can't remember where it was, or that conversation. We might have even been in the bedroom having this conversation, and it came out of kind of left field because we were talking about something else, and then it kind of then drifted into this, I'm not sure I believe in marriage, or I've had to think about a lot of stuff, and one of those things is whether or not I believe in monogamy and marriage. And I remember sitting there going, where's this come from?
And where's this going?
And I think for a lot of people, having a reaction of terror, like, where is it, where this phrase, where is this going to lead? And is this literally just this, he's now going to announce that he doesn't, and he no longer wants in? And to your point, that fear sitting in the solar plexus, sitting in the gut, feeling sick, but kind of thinking, okay, I need to hear this out, and not really potentially. So where I think I may have been doing the work, it's probably gone in through osmosis, was not to immediately jump on a defense or an attack and kind of going, what the fuck, what, and just start shouting. It's just kind of, okay, I'm just going to sit here and listen to this. And you were very quick to say, but don't worry, I do. But I just spent quite a lot of time recently just thinking about whether I did.
Yeah.
And that was a bit like, okay. I think at the time, I honestly didn't know what to do with that information. And also thinking, probably quite naively, as someone who thought, we've got a really good, strong marriage, we never row, we both, we love each other and we're in alignment, and people kind of hold us up on this pedestal of this great couple, you're such an amazing couple, and it's like, it's all bullshit. But
it's not.
No, it's not. But nobody knows what goes on behind closed doors, and this is an example of that.
Absolutely.
Because without there being a kind of a reason behind it, other than you needing to explore all of these things, it wasn't like somebody had done something to someone else. It was just you were on a path of questioning all of your beliefs up until that point, and some of them were around how you fundamentally wanted to live your life. And was that with another person in the tradition of marriage?
Yeah.
And the long and short of it was, I agreed with you in terms of.
Yeah, I think that on that point, it was, I came out of my cave fundamentally thinking marriage, the institution of marriage, I didn't really believe in, which is not the same as not believing in our relationship. I believed in our relationship. The necessity to be married, I didn't.
Yeah.
And from a monogamy perspective, it was, I actually don't believe human beings are hardwired to be monogamous. I don't believe that, which is not the same as saying I don't think we should have monogamous relationships. I think this, and this is the point for me, it's been about how much of what we do is based on an automatic piece of thinking or belief or whatever that we have been given, rather than actually my personal experience and what I feel and believe is we're not supposed to. It's not like a supposed to be monogamous. It is entirely possible and plausible and real that you meet someone with whom you are monogamous. But I think fundamentally as a species, that isn't hardwired into us. And that really is I think part of the point for me was, that's quite an intellectual distinction, right? I'm throwing out the assumption, the presumed, the conditioned, and I'm having a think about, well, what do I really think? And now what do I believe I want to create in my life? Because I could have all these realizations and it not automatically lead to a prescribed outcome, which is what you had to deal with, I assume.
Yes, but also that the fact that, which is I think the kind of crux of us having this conversation, hey Terry, is, I know Terry wants to join in, is what it's like when you're potentially in a partnership or a relationship or a situation where, with one or more people, where somebody is doing the work, somebody's spending a lot of time thinking and feeling and doing all of that stuff, and the other person potentially isn't, or is a lot further behind in that process. Because as much as I hate the phrase, I do think I have been doing the work.
Yeah.
Not for as long as you, and not to the extent and the frequency that you do, because you basically spend all day doing it. It's your job.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of doing the work light.
But that's interesting as well, because I would, we started by you saying, well, does this make me lesser? Or if you're not doing the work, does it make you lesser? Does it do this? Does it do that? Do the other? And even that, I'm doing the work light. No, you're not. You are reconnecting with who you are. So from my perspective, you're in the process of more deeply connecting with who you really are. That is, as far as I'm concerned, the work. I don't think it needs to be about personal growth or self-healing or any of those labels, because I think we've come to those labels so people can make money out of it. And they can sell you a healing program or a this, that, and the other. Undoubtedly, you are doing the work. And this was, I'm sorry, I've massively interrupted you. You were going to say something, which I've...
No, all I was going to say was, is if you're in a position whereby there's somebody who's doing the work, some person. So, okay, so for us,
yeah,
you had been doing the work for a long time. You'd spent a lot of time questioning all of your beliefs.
Yeah.
And came to realizations about some of them, and felt then that you wanted to share those with me, some of which would directly impact me and my life.
Yeah.
And I guess what I'm trying to say is what the point of this conversation is kind of is exploring that when one person is and one person isn't, or one person is to a greater degree than someone else, and how you kind of navigate that.
Yeah.
Like, does the other person, me, kind of go, right, shit, I need to catch up? Or because if I want to continue being in this life with you, you've kind of gone ahead in this almost kind of almost evolutionary process.
Mm.
And I then feel still like the Neanderthal.
Is that how you feel?
Maybe. If I probably wouldn't have said it if I didn't, really. I guess I
You
do.
don't look like a Neanderthal.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
Smaller forehead.
Less hair.
Not such a heavy brow.
Yeah.
Maybe I do. Maybe I do. Maybe there is a bit of me going, I feel as if I need to get on this train because I'm going to get left behind.
Yeah, I think one of the...
And it's not a bad train to be on.
No. But it's not a train you chose. There's one of the things I'm very aware of is I reached a point where I felt I no longer had any choice but to do this. But that choice has consequences. And one of those potential consequences, so the intended consequences, I'm going to reconnect to who I am. One of the potential unintended consequences is that could very well take me away from you. It could.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of awareness, acceptance, surrender piece, ownership piece. It could. Especially if you're not willing to at least try to get on the train. Thankfully, that hasn't happened. You have been willing. Even your response to me coming out of my cave and kind of going, oh, by the way, I don't believe in marriage. Your response to that was not massive reaction. It was pause, respond, which is part of the process of moving from response to react to response, and part of the process of interrupting the automatic, because I imagine there was big threat. Your body felt threatened. Your beliefs felt threatened. But I think there is is it a necessity for both, if you're in a relationship, for both individuals to be on some kind of a path? I think it helps.
I think it does. I think it
because
is necessary, because other paths are going to
diverging. Yeah. But that said, it definitely helps. I don't know whether it is 100% necessary, because if the person doing the work does sufficient work or enough work in the right areas for that unit to stay together, then...
But then is that fair for one person to be doing all the heavy lifting?
That's the choice of the person doing the heavy lifting. They might sit there kind of going, this isn't fair, you're not doing the work. At which point it's a potential point of divergence. Or they might say, actually, irrespective of the fact you're not doing the work, all of these things about you I love. And there is, I don't mean a pros and cons list, but there is a balance that I'm willing to engage in that maintains this relationship. I think it's very difficult if you're someone who... So I went from massively opinionated, fairly certain I knew everything that I thought I knew, to I've no idea. From massively judgmental of other people to not very judgmental of other people. And that judgment piece, I now, when I am judgmental of other people, I recognize it, because somewhere I'm judging myself. That's the only time now. Only time? Ooh, a bit of a sweeping statement. But fundamentally, I'm no longer a very judgmental person of other people, because I recognize I'm doing the best I can, and it might not be as good as I want it to be, but it is the best I can do in this moment. And if that is true for me, then it's true for everybody else. But had you not been doing the work yourself in whatever way you were doing it, however you were doing it, I think our relationship would have been much harder over the last 9 years.
Yeah, and I didn't come to that realization about my belief in marriage was not for the same reasons that yours was. Mine was more, this is a patriarchal chain around my, no, but
yeah.
that kind of,
why did I take your surname?
Yeah, no, but it wasn't really like.
But we did have that conversation as well. It was like, if we were in that situation now,
we wouldn't
have got married.
No,
you wouldn't have taken my name, or we would have double barreled.
Yeah, still not too late. Wyndham Ward James Ward.
Wyndham Ward James.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. But I don't necessarily feel the need.
I still do the work, but only to a certain degree.
Yeah.
I don't really know where we go from here.
No, well, we've been talking nearly an hour, so I think it.
Okay.
But I think from my perspective, it might not be a full conversation, but I'm still interested in that impact on you, given we were married, we'd been married 10 years, we had created a lovely life, which I really gave you no option. I was going to start fucking with, not intentionally and not with a desire to break it down, but being made redundant, changing career, being made redundant, and not replacing my professional income like for like has had an impact, and you didn't choose that.
No, but I don't think. No, I didn't choose it, and which is another word that you like to use, which I now use more. Thanks very much for the subliminal
instead of but
coaching. And I do believe that our relationship is better for it.
I would agree.
So so if we were going back into, would you do it? I wouldn't not do this.
It's a hell of a relief. Could you imagine?
Because actually I do remember that kind of, that feeling, that feeling of, honestly, like, where's this going? Is our marriage over? Is he suddenly going to drop this bomb on us that actually he doesn't want to be married to me or to anyone anymore, and I'm going to be divorced? And having a very, not a similar conversation, but one probably a couple of months ago in the garden, where I said to you, if you need to go and do whatever it is that you feel that you might need to do, I think I'd remember said, if you need to go and walk the earth, and then I'm not going to stop you doing that. And I don't think I would have been in a position to say that 3 years ago. A year ago, even.
Which is so what's changed? What's happened in that year?
I think I've done those 5 steps.
I've
literally I've certainly surrendered. I haven't done the action, or maybe the action was saying those words. But I certainly have surrendered to, I cannot control you or me. I cannot control this. All I can do is surrender to it. And if we're getting into the kind of couples therapy, I cannot make this person stay with me unless they want to. And this isn't due to a lack of love. It's because you have started on a journey, and I don't know where that's going to take you.
And interestingly, when you said, do do you think, because I'd said to you, one of my worries is that the more I do the work, the greater the chance I fear that we'll start diverging. Not because I felt that was what was happening, but just kind of projecting forward and creating fear in my own mind. The response to which from you was, well, do you think you need to go off? And because if you do, I'm not gonna stop you. And actually tying this back to doing the work, I think it doesn't have to be that. We kind of see these stories of people chucking their jobs in and complete transformations of their lives. It doesn't have to be that. It can be things that feel massive that once you've worked through them, you then go, actually, no, it's cool. I just needed to recontextualize, and I needed to understand that the reactions I have are based on beliefs and truths that are genuinely mine, rather than most of our reactions are based on truths and beliefs that we've been given. And I think it's easy to think you have to run away, which I did lots, in order to address all of that stuff, because it's so much hard. It feels so much harder having to talk to you about it, because there's vulnerability required. And not only that, but I feel I am the catalyst that is potentially rewriting a whole load of what happens to us, because I'm rewriting what happens to me. And that's still terrifying. Less so now because we talk about it more. And actually, I think that, I don't know where this is going, but I think that is, maybe there are other episodes of couples therapy we end up doing, but having the courage, it's another one of those in inverted commas phrases, to speak your truth to the person you love most is very difficult and enormously rewarding when whichever of you it is finds the courage and is met with the courage to see the truth, to that person's truth, and not be in a reactive state, and hold space for those two people to talk and work stuff out. I think there's courage required on both sides of that.
Okay, so what you're saying, just because I'm conscious we've been babbling on for ages, is that so the work can be whatever you want it to be, and you can do it. It can take seconds, it could take years.
Yeah.
It probably takes forever.
Yeah.
And you don't have to go full woo-woo.
Yeah.
To be able to do it.
Yeah.
And you don't have to upend your life to do it.
Yeah.
So that those things can coexist. You could go a bit woo-woo, but still have a job and a mortgage and feed the cat and do the food shopping and all of those kind of things.
Yeah.
You don't have to go and
don't have to go full monk.
Live on a mountain somewhere.
No. And also, it doesn't, like I said earlier, it doesn't require both people, but it also requires both people.
Yeah.
I think there's so much paradox in all of this stuff that there is no single way. So that whole kind of, what the fuck is the work? For me, it is anything and everything we do that helps us reconnect to who we really are. Full stop.
Okay, good times.
Yeah, good times. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
How did this go?
I'm sweating. My armpits are sweating. I don't know. I guess
we'll find out.
We'll find out.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. Thank you, Louisa, for being willing to have this conversation. Who knows? There may be more of these in the future with Louisa. But thank you so much for listening. As always, it's greatly appreciated. If anything that is spoken about on this podcast is landing with you that you would like to share, please like, comment, subscribe to the podcast wherever you get it. If anybody you think might benefit from listening to it, please share it with them. And if you have anything you would like me to talk about, or who knows, us to talk about, please let me know. I want these episodes to be relevant. So anything that is resonating with you and that you would like discussed further, please let me know. The best way to get in touch is via email. Email is handsupifyou'rehuman@gmail.com. And I think that is it for today. Thank you so much for listening. Let me know how you feel, and I wish you a joyful and peaceful few days. Thank you, Louisa.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Speak to you soon.